Chapter 33. For the millionth time, don't exaggerate. Heading towards my 8th decade of life has given rise to some interesting introspection. Having lived as long as I have has not made me any wiser, but maybe more philosophical. Retirement from the working world has freed me from the mundane routines that once dictated my days, allowing me the time to reflect. Looking back, I can pinpoint some successes, but also a disproportionate number of embarrassing episodes. I can only hope that through these contemplations, I might come to terms with past foolishness, or at the very least, rationalize my youthful ignorance. That said, I may be older, but I'm still not exempt from doing silly things. Maybe if I ever turn 90, I'll look back at my 70s and wonder why I lacked common sense then too. Longevity and perspective. People are living longer than ever. A century ago, making it to 70 would have been considered remarkable. Going back another 100 years, and it was practically unheard of. Thanks to medical advancements, improved diets, and other factors, some experts now predict that living well past 100 will soon be commonplace. Speaking of diet, I've always been skeptical of the old adage, you are what you eat. It seems far more accurate to say, you are what you do for a living. Imagine being at a party, beer in hand, when someone asks about you. Would you ever respond with, well, I mostly eat red meat and force down the occasional piece of broccoli? Of course not. You talk about your work, your interests, anything but your dietary habits. But I digress. Back to the topic of longevity. I recall a conversation from my teaching days at Pickering with Jane Zavitz, our esteemed school librarian, and an authentic Quaker. One afternoon, she walked into the dining hall looking uncharacteristically troubled. Inviting her to sit down at our table, I asked if something was wrong. She sighed and explained that she had been arguing with her father about his smoking habits. He refused to stop smoking his pipe even though it's bad for his health, she said, clearly frustrated. At that time, Jane was 79 years old. Curious, I asked how old her father was. 102, she replied, and my mother is 104. I raised an eyebrow. Jane went on, recounting her conversation with her father. Daddy, I'm not going to tell you to stop smoking anymore, because, apparently, it doesn't harm you, she had told him. It seems longevity was deeply embedded in Quaker genes, at least in the Zavitz family, considering that I was only in my late 40s at that time. I must have seemed like an infant by Quaker lifespan standards. The pension I resented. When I was younger, retirement felt like a distant, abstract concept. As a young teacher, I was begrudgingly made to contribute a portion of my pay towards the teacher's pension plan. Back then, wanting access to every penny I earned, but the deductions were mandatory. In my 20s, the idea of somebody occupying the body of a 70-something-year-old, let alone planning financially for that reality, seemed incomprehensible. I remember sitting in the staff room with other new teachers, grumbling as we examined our pay stubs, lamenting the deductions that ate into our hard-earned salaries. Fast forward to today, and I now understand with crystal clarity the value of those contributions. What's more, I live off those investments in the form of a pension. Ironically, that technically makes me a capitalist. How strange. Zeto's frustration. During one of my childhood visits to my grandfather Zeto, I noticed his health had declined significantly. He was essentially housebound, and his spirits were low. Pacing the dining room, he suddenly reached for his wallet, then, in a fit of frustration, threw it across the room. It hit the wall, spilling several bills to the floor. Slowly he shuffled to his bedroom where he sat on the edge of his bed staring at the floor. The rhythmic ticking of his bedside clock punctuated the sound of his labored breathing. Looking up at me with furrowed brows, he spoke with sudden intensity. "I got lots of money, but it's no damn good now. No damn good, no damn good." Even as a naive child, I understood exactly what he meant. He had carefully saved the money throughout his life, sacrificing and going without so that he could enjoy the fruits of his labor in old age. But now that money was useless. It couldn't buy him good health. He was only 73. A year before that incident, I had once asked Zetto why he paced so much back and forth across his living room, all while half watching George Perot on a small black and white TV set. "I need to tell my life story," he had said. "I worry that when I die, everything I've done, everything I've seen, everything will be forgotten." The looming shadow of his emphysema had made him acutely aware of his mortality. Ironically, aside from his failing lungs, the rest of his body seemed relatively strong. Without the damage from smoking, he might have lived much longer. But there was another obstacle. Zetto was illiterate. He couldn't record his stories, and it frustrated him deeply. His reading abilities were limited too, and his writing skills barely extended beyond signing his name. The best he could manage was rudimentary Slovak when writing letters to his family back in the old country. He understood the power of the written word, though, its permanence, its ability to transmit messages into the distant future. He admired it, even envied it. Knowing his stories would die with him only added to his frustration. At that time I felt helpless. Zetto was such a good storyteller. I had no way to preserve his words for him. I never considered that decades later I might have the chance to illuminate some of his stories myself. Not that I'm much of a writer. Even my grocery lists are riddled with misspellings. But thanks to technology, the ever-reliable spell check, I can at least attempt to put words together in a coherent fashion. I have no doubt Zetto would have loved a computer. He probably would have made excellent use of spell check too. Then again, like writing and golf, the important thing isn't perfection. It's making the attempt, regardless of the outcome.